find the real entrance to this place, apparently I got locked inside. So I'm now inside of Camp Solomon Schechter, which is contracted by the state of Washington as a quarantine camp for people with illnesses. Hey government, I am on public property. I'm on a public road. I don't know why you guys just locked me inside, but here I am inside of quarantine camp. It's very quiet here. I did some research on this camp today, and I actually talked to public health officials about this. I want to fill you guys in on what's really going on with quarantine camps in Washington state. Yes, they are a real thing. Yes, there's multiple, but this one is state run, and it strangely enough, it's being contracted from a Jewish summer camp. So normally this place is a Jewish summer camp, and they've got a nice fancy gate here. Let me see if I can just, I'm gonna have to climb the fence to get out of quarantine camp, you guys. I'm gonna fill you guys in on the statutes out of Washington. I'm literally like climbing a fence right now. Washington has some really concerning codes in regards to local health officials and their authority to throw you in quarantine camp against your will. It's called involuntary isolation and quarantine. And I've linked those state health codes down below. But here it is, Camp Solomon Schechter. I've officially escaped from camp by climbing this fence. There's actually higher fences back inside. As I was kind of driving to try to find the official entrance, I came across a pretty high fence. I can show you guys a little bit later. Sponsor of my coverage today is My Patriot Supply. Use my link below to get emergency food supply. Now is the time, guys, to stock up on emergency food supply. My link below will save you $50 to $150 on your emergency food supply kit, as well as water filters. So click that link from My Patriot Supply down below. It's preparewithivory.com. That's your discount link. Here in Washington State, we are about an hour south of Seattle right now, closer to the Olympia area. This is Thurston County. And you can see it is a Jewish kids summer camp contracted by the state of Washington. I talked to the Washington State Department of Health Public Information Officer today. He told me that they have this camp contracted through March of this year. Washington State has bought out the camp. I just think it is incredibly creepy that officials have prepared a camp for involuntary isolation, meaning they can throw you in this camp against your will for extended periods of time, and it's a Jewish camp. Okay, if I was a Jewish parent of a kid who goes here, I would never send my kid here again, knowing that my kid may be in the same bed as someone who was thrown in here against their will by the government. Being a Jew, that's just horrific to me. But here it is. This is really happening in the United States of America. A link down below is the code. Now I'm going to climb this fence to get back to my actual car. Figure out after this live stream how I can get my car out of camp, because literally I think someone was just departing as I was coming in, and the gate just closed on me. So I printed out some documentation of what is really the wording here with these camps. Let me show you guys. Isolation and quarantine guidelines and forms. Now I've linked this site down below. Isolation and quarantine guidelines and forms. This is from the Washington State Department of Health. They have this nice little website all laid out for public health officials across the state. So, if you are the such and such, if you're the health director in Podunk Town, and you've determined that someone may have gotten in close contact with someone with the illness, and that person does not want to isolate, and you want to isolate them against their will, well, the state officials have lined up all the forms so you can easily file a lawsuit against this person to force them into quarantine camp. It's incredibly stunning. There was a state health board meeting in regards to these quarantine camp rules last month. Apparently, some bloggers talked about this and jumped to conclusions that it might be about locking away people who haven't had the needle in the arm. So USA Today ran to the defense of the Washington State Health Department and said, no. They're not going to lock away people who haven't had the needle in the arm. But the fact is, whatever came out of that meeting, we have these stunning codes. This is Washington Administrative Code 246-100-040, procedures for isolation or quarantine. At his or her sole discretion, a local health officer may issue an emergency detention order causing a person or group of persons to be detained for purposes of isolation or quarantine in accordance with subsection 3 of this section, or may petition the Superior Court, it's partially cut off, basically to force this person into involuntary detention for purposes of isolation or quarantine in accordance with subsection 4. It says here they can isolate this person. Local officials can isolate a person against their will in a quarantine camp for up to 10 days. If they feel that person needs to be in quarantine camp longer, they can petition the Superior Court to keep that person in quarantine camp up to 30 days. This is real life, guys. This is on the books in Washington State. Not only is it on the books, but they have the infrastructure in place. I think this fencing is very interesting. So here we are at Stern Family and Paul Norton. So for, according to the First Amendment, I have the right to be on a public street covering what's really happening in the world. That's my free press right. So I'm not trespassing in this camp. But I did want to just show you guys kind of the view here. Now, back down here, it kind of turns to a gravel road, and that's where you start to see the camp, the little cabins, and I think there's like a basketball court and things like that. And there's a little lake down there further if you actually look at their pictures online. But yeah, a Jewish summer camp, Camp Solomon Schechter, has been contracted just through March. So the state says that they're going to begin easing up on their regulations in March due to, well, I think it sounds like due to everyone else doing that first, state of Washington. So I guess we're the last harsh guys, them in Hawaii. Maybe we should ease up a bit. So I'm going to see if I can find someone over here to get me out of this fence. So here we are in quarantine camp now. I talked to state health officials for 7 months out of 2021. Their official quarantine camp was the Lakeview Inn, a little bit further south of here, I believe it is. The state had rented out a hotel, the Lakeview Inn, for over $120,000 a month. They were paying this hotel to lock people in there with or without their will. Some people wanted to go to quarantine camp, I guess, allegedly. Others got forced into it. But there was a lot of frustration over that hotel being used for such a purpose. So the state ended up moving it here to Camp Solomon Schechter, which, it's a summer camp. It's not summer right now. So just before the new year, I think it was December 28th, the state moves their quarantine facility over here to Thurston, I guess is the name of the town. And as I recall, or is it Thurston County? Anyway, this is about an hour south of Seattle. And here we have the sign for main camp. So this is a facility that's been contracted for housing these individuals according to the code. They can be forced into here. And at the time of their transition from that hotel to this camp, it was reported by the Chronicle, the local newspaper here, that 6 people were being quarantined or isolated at that time of the move. The people the state targets to quarantine or isolate are people who are not locals, according to the health department and the local papers. They say that people, if someone gets sick in their own in their hometown, then the county quarantine facility can house that person. Like King County, where Seattle is, has its own quarantine camp. There, it's in a hotel. They've again contracted out a hotel to lock people away while they recover, or while they prove that they didn't get sick due to close contact. So it's either isolation. I guess the legal term, according to health officials telling me today, legal term for isolation is people who've been in close contact with someone who's ill but haven't gotten ill themselves. But there's a fear that they may get ill. So they lock them away for a while, and when they prove that they're still not getting ill, then they're let out. Quarantine is when someone is ill, they have symptoms, and they get locked away. This camp is for both. So that's the situation. Health officials told me that there are no people being housed here right now. There were 6 in the week before New Year's. There were 6 being housed by the state for quarantine and isolation. At this point, with Omicron being a weak variant, they have 0 people housed here. That's a great sign. And so I know by doing this live stream, I'm going to take heat, and people are going to say, "Oh, Ivory, you're making a big deal about something. This is not Nazi Germany." Okay. You know what? We do need to shine light on the fact that all the infrastructure is in place in Washington State to pull a Nazi move if they wanted to. Okay. And for us to say, "Hey, we just trust our government officials and we think they're super sweet and they would never do something Nazi," is a dumb move. What we should do as citizens of a free country is never allow the infrastructure to get in place. Never allow this code to be written. Never allow the government to contract out a Jewish camp, of all places. But indeed, in Washington State, in the United States of America, that has happened. Washington State has the infrastructure in place that if they want to escalate this and fully strip people of their freedoms, they can. And I have noticed a very strange culture form, I'm sure you all have, where the people who've had the needle in the arm see the people who haven't had the needle in the arm as unclean. And in fact, a lot of the people who haven't had the needle in the arm see the people with the needle in the arm as being unclean as well. These sides are being pit against each other. Now, it just reminds me a little bit, if you study history, it reminds me a lot of Nazi Germany, where the Nazi propaganda pit other races, mainly Aryans, against the Jews. And there was propaganda signs out saying, posters out saying how unclean the Jews were as far as their health. And that if you spend too much time around Jews, you're going to get sick, you're going to get typhus. So what we don't want is for our culture to escalate to that point, where it became so embedded in the minds of the Germans that Jews were supposedly unclean, that when a Jew was locked away in a camp like this, and the media never said a bad thing about it, all the other people were like, I guess that's okay. You know, it's really interesting to me that all this concerning infrastructure has been put in place in the state of Washington, and there's hardly a peep about it. I mean, in other states that I've been to, people say, have you heard that rumor that there might be quarantine camps in Washington State? I'm like, guys, there are quarantine camps. The media is not up in arms about it like you'd think they might be, because the media is so freaking brainwashed to be in bed with the government, to be so trusting of the government. Guys, I come from 9 years of corporate news, and I can tell you that It is a brainwashing in the newsroom to trust the government officials as gospel, that they know what's best. You don't question them. You don't question health officials when there's an illness going around. Journalists got to snap out of it and realize that we need to get our curiosity back and take a step back and think clearly and say, hey, these insane codes are on the books in Washington State, that a local health official may issue an emergency detention order causing a person or persons or group of persons to be forced into quarantine, Jewish quarantine camp. It's like, is this a joke? You guys pick a Jewish camp too? Just to rub it in our faces or what? But this is empty right now. But I'm not comfortable with this slow movement that we've been doing over these 2 years. And I don't know if you guys are comfortable with this. But this slow movement towards things like this. And it's like, oh, no, it's fine. Our government leaders are wonderful. They mean the very best when they're going to force someone into quarantine. So the Chronicle, who covered this, who covered the transition back last week of December 2021, the state moving their quarantine camp to here, Camp Solomon Schechter. The Chronicle documented that there hasn't really been a lot of uproar about this, they said, except for this one time, a man in October. There was a man who was on a flight to Alaska, and his layover was at the Seattle airport. And while at the Seattle airport, someone happened to decide that he was ill. That man got grabbed by the government and thrown into quarantine camp. That man then escaped camp. He fled the camp illegally, escaped camp, ran across several lanes of Interstate 5 to get the heck out of here. Can you guys, I think I'm back. Am I still live? I think I'm still live. Tell me if you can hear me. Someone called me and it screwed up my whole live stream. I'm not seeing it. Okay, can you guys see me? Here we go. Okay, Camp Solomon Schechter. So my point is, any of us could be flying through Seattle. In the airport, they can decide that you seem like someone who had close contact, and they can throw you in Jewish quarantine camp that is on the books in Washington State. It just is a fact that you are not safe going through Washington State right now if a tyrant decides they don't like you and they feel that you are unclean and they want to throw you in quarantine camp. It is on the books and the infrastructure is in place in Washington State to do that. I am thrilled that this camp is empty right now, according to health officials. Is it truly empty? Hey, I guess it's going to be hard to tell. Would the Nazis have said that their camps were empty when an American called up and said, are they empty? Probably. So can we trust what they're really saying? Who knows? But this man was excited to go fishing in Alaska. Next thing he knows, he's locked away in Washington State quarantine camp. This is reality in the U.S., and I have no idea. Well, actually, I was going to say I have no idea why it's not being covered, but I actually do have an idea, because I've worked in newsrooms for 9 corporate news years, and I can tell you what the reaction would be if they get a call saying, I or my loved one is being forced into quarantine by the government in a foreign state. The newsroom would say, oh, good, that's normal. Everyone should do that. That's just how corrupted and mind-twisted the newsrooms are at this point. So this is reality. I wanted to show you guys the camp itself. And that's what I got for you guys. So I was like, what else? Oh, I was going to also say, I did reach out to the camp for comment. Camp Solomon Schechter has not gotten back to me. I called them and emailed them. So just giving them benefit of the doubt. I'm not trying to smear them. I'm trying to tell their side. If they want to give me a tour of their wonderful, comfortable camp, then I'm happy to show my viewers exactly what it looks like. I got the email from the Department of Health was very, very nice, talking about a very comfortable place to stay while you're in quarantine. It's very nice, wonderful. Anyone would want to go to quarantine camp. The last thing I was going to say is that the religious leader here at Camp Solomon Schechter, interestingly, wrote an article on Camp Solomon Schechter's website in August of last year, talking about the magic of fencing. That's the magic of fences. That is literally the headline of the little article on their camp website, talking about a new fence being put up around this camp and how wonderful that is. That a new fence is being. I think I was able to show you guys a little bit of the wire fencing back there, but he talked about how it created more of a sense of community if they're all within one fence. I thought that was super creepy given the timing of everything. I'm just laying this all out there for you guys. Wish me luck in getting my car out of camp, because it is trapped right now. Wish me luck. I'm here to give a speech. I was asked to speak to a group in Washington State. I said, well, I'm here. I'm going to check out the quarantine camps myself. So there it is. You guys have a good one. Wish me luck, and I'll talk to you guys later.